Hello, welcome to the Career Discovery podcast. On the show today, we'll be learning about our guests' area of expertise, their career journey, and what they wish they'd known when they were just starting out. Thanks so much for watching. We really hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Dipali, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good. It's been a busy day, as usual, but this will be fun. I think we're going to have fun today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, well, just to get us warmed up, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and how long you've been doing it for.
So, my name's Dipali. I'm a dentist and a business owner, and I've been doing both of them for about 15 years now.
Wow.
I was a dentist first, and I graduated back in 2007, and we bought our first business in 2011 and have been doing both since.
Wow. All right. Well, I can't wait to hear more about that as we get into the conversation. But just to get us warmed up, are you a podcast fan?
I am sometimes. It just depends on the podcast. Yeah, I like a few. I mean, I like Snog, Marry, Avoid. Is it with Chris Ramsey?
Yeah.
I love listening to the banter between him and his wife, and it's quite funny, really.
Yeah.
There is another slightly controversial one that I like listening to, and it's called Brown Girls Do It Too.
Okay. And what's that one about?
Yeah. Well, it's hosted by the BBC, and it's basically 2 or 3 Asian women talking about all the topics that are a bit of a taboo in our culture.
Yeah.
So it's quite groundbreaking. It's very feminist, and I just love that they're talking about things that we're not allowed to talk about, you know. So and I think it's quite inspiring. So I listen to that too.
Oh, I love it. Well, I've not listened to either of those, so I'll have to check them both out. Thank you. Thanks for sharing those.
Yeah, you should.
All right. So we're going to talk about your area of expertise now, dentistry. So, first of all, maybe let's start with misconceptions about your role. Outside of your friends and family, what do they think you do all day?
Teeth, really, because you tell people you're a dentist and they think you do teeth, which is true, but then they don't always appreciate my role as a business owner, because not everybody understands what that involves on a day-to-day basis. It's like when someone says to you, I work in the city in finance. You're like, what does that actually mean, though? In reality, what does it mean? What do you do every day? They think I do teeth. They think I fire people sometimes. And that's pretty much it. They don't know much else about it.
Okay, so teeth and firing people. Well, I'm sure it's much more than that, and we're going to find out about that in a moment. But in terms of an industry overview, I think most of us will have an understanding of the industry of dentistry. But is there anything else about that profession, at that industry level that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not familiar with the dental profession and the industry, then what will be new information to you is that dental practices are actually small independent businesses like your cafe or restaurant or bookshop. We're small independent businesses. We are responsible for the day-to-day running of that business, the finance of that business, whatever comes in, whatever goes out, and people, recruitment, HR, that side of things as well. And so they don't always understand that. They sort of look at us and assume that we're very rich and we drive fast cars and charge a lot of money to cause people a lot of pain, but they don't see what happens behind the scenes, how we actually earn our money. So I think that's quite a misconception about us as people or as professionals.
Yeah, that's a really great point, actually, because when I think about my dentist, I guess I've often thought about the dentist I go to as more, a bit like a doctor's surgery, but actually it sounds quite different to that. Yeah, okay.
It is very, very different. And even though we're a section of the NHS, we are not, we have contracts with them, but as such, we are not run by them. We're not managed by them, and they have no input in our day-to-day running. So it's all on us as business owners.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really interesting. Thank you. So if you were to, tell us what your patients rely on you for, or your business for, at a bird's eye view, how would you describe that?
So obviously patients expect us to deliver healthcare, as in they expect to receive dental services from us. But what they expect as well is to come in and see a fully functioning, clean surgery. We have so many regulations that we have to adhere to, and how we're allowed to provide a service. Obviously, they want to come in, have access to the dental care, but they also want to be treated nicely. And that's a huge part of our role as well, customer service. And that always goes underappreciated, I think, sometimes. And they don't always appreciate that we are a wider team. It's not just the dentists, but the dental nurses that work alongside us, the reception team that allow for the seamless booking of appointments and all of that. And there's a management team behind the scenes running it like any other business, and that often goes unappreciated by the public, I think.
Yeah. And I think that there's a perception that going to the dentist can be scary. So how do you deal with that and those patients who maybe are a bit, scared of coming?
I think most patients are on a spectrum when it comes to having anxiety about coming to the dentist. I think it's very rare, or, for someone to say, I feel no anxiety going to the dentist. But hey, we've got sharp tools, and injections, and we're all up in your face, invading what is a very private, intimate space. I don't blame them for being afraid. I always find it really weird when you spend like an hour taking out a really difficult tooth, and you've massacred this person's mouth to get it out. And at the end of it, they're like, thank you so much. How much do I owe you? And you're like, well, it's this much for the pleasure of that, And I always find it such a strange transaction to then ask to be paid for having inflicted that on them. It's what we do, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I've got to ask, are you afraid of the dentist?
I've never had a filling in my whole life. And I've not been exposed to a lot of dental treatment to be afraid of it. I think I would be afraid of it only because I would probably have a healthy amount of mistrust for most dentists going, I know whether you're good or not. I can tell whether you've done a good job or not. And I've seen all the things that can go wrong. So I think it's more that. It's more a fear that they won't do a good enough job than actually fear for the procedure itself. Yeah.
Okay. So look after your teeth, and then you won't need to have the fillings, and then you won't need to experience the anxiety. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And then you will like dentists as people generally. So, And that's the other thing. Patients always come in, and the first thing they say is, look, I hate dentists. And I always say, me too. I'm married to one. I know exactly how you feel. But we hear that quite a lot. And I find that quite offensive. You don't go into bakers and go, listen, I hate bakers, but also can I have 3 cakes, So, it's not always that lovely when people come to see us.
Oh, well, it sounds hilarious. So I suppose laughter makes everything a little bit easier.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. All right. So now we want to kind of deep dive and get into the nitty gritty. What does an average day look like for you?
So it will depend on a day when I'm seeing patients. So my week is kind of made up of seeing patients some of the time, and then the rest of the time doing more behind the scenes sort of management type duties. So if I'm seeing patients, I'll have to be in at about 8:30 in the morning, ready to go at 9. So that means in my scrubs, looking at my list for the day, seeing who I've got coming in and what procedures I've got planned. And then there will always be things that get thrown in, emergency patients and that. So, some days will be calm and manageable because whatever's coming in you can deal with. And there are days when you hit an unexpected challenge a difficult tooth you expected to have out quickly suddenly is not so easy to take out, things like that. And, they can throw you. So, and also ultimately we are dealing with people. I think the hardest part of our job is not the teeth themselves, it's really the people. Because, like you said, it's managing the anxiety, it's managing expectations, it's, and there's so many misconceptions about the dentist or the fees that we charge or the NHS, within dentistry, that it's that we're battling with daily, most of the time we'll go in talking to people rather than actually doing the dental treatment. So, and that's a regular day if I'm seeing patients. And if I'm not seeing patients, well, then every day is different. It will be anything between having meetings with the managers, recruitment, doing interviews or just anything to do with staff, really, staff management, disciplinary meetings. Those aren't always fun. It's looking through policies and protocols within the practice, making sure that we are, adhering to them and also just looking at the business as a whole. What can we do every day to get a little bit more out of it and think ahead and think, how are we going to keep up with the times? What, as a business, how are we going to stand out from the crowd? And that's marketing, social media, that side of things as well.
Yeah. Wow. So a bit of everything, really. And
and I think they say jack of all trades, master of none.
I've described myself as that a few times. For sure. What about the I don't know, perhaps more ad hoc or exciting activities or responsibilities that aren't happening on an average day or in an average week, but they do fall under your remit?
So an example of something like that would be, well, we decided to move premises. We took one of our old sites was too small and we were outgrowing it, and it was evident that we could do more as a business, but the premises themselves were restricting us, and we decided to move site, which was a 2-year long project. And if you've ever been involved in a building project, it's got nothing to do with dentistry and everything to do with it being a building project. It was dealing with plumbers and electricians and builders and all the problems that the site threw up daily, the challenges, and then actually physically moving premises, getting ready, both in the way that, I kind of enjoy interior design as a hobby. So it was for me designing the new practice. And that was fun. It was an ad hoc thing and it took a few months, but it was so much fun. And that wasn't part of kind of my regular day. So that kind of thing is always interesting.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's great, isn't it? Because I have to say, if I thought about dentistry as a profession, I probably wouldn't have thought about that, you doing interior design as part of that. But how exciting that, I guess the business management side of the role throws up all these opportunities to get involved in other things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, wow,
and because I enjoy the interior design, my focus for the business has really been to try and modernize the practices and kind of incorporate design and dentistry, because I just feel like most dental practices out there are quite sterile, quite clinical looking and really very boring in terms of appearance. So, but they don't need to be like that. We are a business for people, so why shouldn't it look like that? Why shouldn't it feel like that? That I'm sort of slowly refurbishing each of the business or each of the sites, and I won an award for interior design last year for one of my dental practices, which was quite nice actually. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Well done. And like you say, it is something that we need to get done, but there's nothing to say that we can't have it done in a nice environment, which actually probably helps ease all of the things we were talking about before with regards to anxiety and so on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, lovely. Brilliant. Okay. So tell us what you enjoy most about your role, your very broad role.
I enjoy working with people, whether that's the people in my team or patients, whatever context it may be in. I actually love working with people. I couldn't do a job that didn't involve that.
Yeah. And what about the what's most challenging about your role?
my business partner is my husband. And the most challenging thing for us is drawing the line between us as business partners and us as, life partners. And the lines become so blurry. And, work goes home with you and home comes to work with you. If we've had an argument at home and we're not talking to each other at home, we do have to talk to each other at work. And it's quite funny because the minute we get home, we're not talking again, but we've been talking all day. That becomes really challenging. I think where it impacts on your relationship and there's no way to separate the two. I think I found that really challenging over the years.
Yeah, I can imagine. And what about for a dentist who perhaps isn't working with their partner? What do you think they might find challenging about the job or the profession?
I think that the stress of managing people, even as patients, can be overwhelming at the best of times. I do think there's a lot of... I think they're ill-prepared when they come out from university. They have this very single-minded vision of what dentistry is. You go in, you treat patients, you go home. And actually, as a profession, we're evolving so quickly, compared to other industries, that they are expected to rise up and meet challenges that they're ill prepared for. Now, whether that's clinically, how to upskill, how to provide treatments in this new world where people are making all kinds of demands on them, where they're, having their teeth straightened and all of that. These are not things we learn as an undergraduate, but are eventually expected to learn as soon as we start practicing, or we'll find that there's no place for us in this world, because we don't have the right skill set. And I think that it's also the other facets to our role. We are managing patients, we're managing the team, our nurse, all of those little aspects. Actually, no one teaches you them, and even social media. If we want to create a professional profile for ourselves, we need to be photographers and social media influencers and all these other things that actually no one taught us to do. So I think that that's the challenge. It's evolving in this new professional world of ours.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. And I think, to your point, I think when you grow up, and certainly if I think about going to the dentist as a child and a teenager and a young adult, it was more around going to get something fixed or checked. Whereas, when I see and read and hear about dentistry, we are now seeing lots of, procedures that are about enhancing what you've got or changing what you've got. So it's now almost more holistic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And new treatments are emerging every day that dentists can now kind of incorporate under their belt. Facial aesthetics. So there are so many more avenues open to us as professionals to develop and progress in. But these are not things that are talked about at an undergraduate level, which is such a shame. Because I mentor new graduates for the last 12 years. Every year we're given a new graduate to train and mentor and practice. It's like having a child. And you get given this child every September, and you don't know if it's going to be a girl or a boy. And when you find out, you get excited. But then also, you get given this fresh new mind to mold and to teach and to inspire. And I think that can be quite... I love that side of my role, but also it can be quite challenging because, like I said, they come out very single-minded at a university, and it's teaching them dentistry is so much more than just what you've learned in university.
Yeah, that's just a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, great. So when you think about the work you do, what makes you most proud?
I think that the thing that makes me most proud is that when we first started, we were a small business, really. We had about 12, 13 employees, and we were just muddling through every day. And now, 10 years later, we have 4 sites, about 100 employees, and and exactly, and our turnover is done. It's grown and grown year on year. but also just that we've developed each site, each business, and to get the most out of it. And I think that's what I'm most proud of when I turn around and say, this is who I am, this is what I do. It's quite nice. I didn't see myself here when I was younger, but it's nice to know this is what I do and feel quite proud of it.
Yeah, and that's amazing. That's, I think that, I think that's a really inspiring story of how you can take something and grow it. And, to have 4 sites and 100 staff, that's incredible. Wow.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, right. Well, let's take a look at your journey, because I want to hear where it all began. So when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
My parents are both doctors. We're obviously Indian. Our heritage is Indian, and they're both doctors. And you might not know this, but every Indian person out there will know that their generation is a lot more small-minded than, say, our generation, and they believe that the best thing that you could be would be a doctor, and then the second best thing you could be was a dentist, and then there were the accountants. And anything after that, well, it wasn't even worth telling your friends about, So it was a question of pride for my parents that I went to university and did medicine. So that was a bit of an argument in our household. I didn't want to do medicine. I'd seen their lives growing up, and how taxing it was on family life. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to choose that. So dentistry was a compromise between us. And I'm the kind of person that I wasn't very strong-minded as a young person. I didn't know my own mind or have the confidence to speak up. So when my parents said, this is what you should do, I very much said, yes, fine. I never really spoke back or protested in any way. And I'm much more different now as an adult. But if I hadn't been a dentist, I probably would have been a teacher or something in economics, something like that. That's probably where I was headed if I didn't do dentistry.
Yeah. Wow. And what about, I guess, before the expectations of others set in? Did you have any wild childhood dreams that you want to share with us?
No, especially, I was a very boring person growing up. I wasn't taught to really have hopes and dreams. I was just told, you'll grow up, you'll do this, you'll find a nice boy at the right age, and he'll be the right kind of person, the right kind of professional.
Yeah.
You'll get married and you'll have children. I mean, my whole life was mapped out for me, and I never really... I never had dreams that were bigger than that. I never understood, actually, that the world is this huge place and there's so much opportunity out there. I never really understood it. And I feel quite sad about that when I think about it, because I've got 3 little girls now, and I want them to know everything the world has to offer, because... it's an amazing, amazing place we live in, and why shouldn't they?
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about what you'd wish you'd known when you were younger a bit later, and I'm really looking forward to that part of the conversation. Okay, so your path, dentistry. So I'm guessing you go off to study dentistry at uni. And what is the length of that course? And is it a mixture of theory and practice? What does that look like?
So dentistry, if you're going to apply for a vocational qualification, like medicine or dentistry, law, anything like that, I think it's one of those courses where you know what you're going to be and what you're going to do at the end of it. It's a very fixed concept. It's not like if you study history, you've got so much more opportunity. It's quite abstract where you may end up. But with medicine, dentistry, anything like that, you know what you're going to be. You're going to be a dentist at the end of it. The course itself, you have to do the subjects at A level. We had to do biology and chemistry and maths. We had to do very specific subjects at A level, and you need grades. You need at least 3 A's to get in, or 4 A's when we were trying to get in, and that in itself is quite a challenge. Once you get in, it's a 5-year course, and the first year is purely theory-based. You've got lectures every day, and you're learning about the sciences, and then it gets more and more clinical as the years progress. So by about 4th, 5th year, you're only about 30% theory, 70% practical in clinics, on patients, trying to get the clinical practical experience in. And then once you graduate, you have got a year, kind of like when you're a doctor and they do their pre-reg. We have to do a year where we're committed to the NHS and working under the mentorship and supervision of a dentist in a practice, which is what I do now. I mentor the graduate dentists, for that year after. And so I did that for a year. And after that, you're then free to do whatever you want without anything to kind of hold you back. So yeah, in reality, it's a 6-year program.
Wow, that's a real commitment right there.
It's a real commitment, and I was the last year that enjoyed the £1,000 per year university fees. But obviously now fees are £24,000 to £30,000 a year, and yes, that's student finance, but you do exit with a phenomenal amount of debt.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And is medicine the same amount of time? As
a career, medicine is 5 years, sometimes 6 if you incorporate a BSc into it. It's 5 to 6 years at university. But the post-qualification journey involves a much bigger commitment to the NHS. And I think before you get to sort of consultant level, which is, you're at your peak, most of my friends who did medicine, they're probably in their late 30s, hitting 40 by the time they are in, they're consultant. And the beauty of dentistry in comparison, and I will always champion it as a profession, is that, we kind of are independent and, a year after leaving university, at that point we can do what we want. The hours are fantastic. There's no, there's no on-calls and then weekends and none of that. And we make really good money for the hours that we put in a healthcare profession.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so you finish your course and then you do your year under supervision, and then tell us what the journey looked like from there.
So what tends to happen after that is you become an associate in a practice, which is a sort of GP, a general practitioner in a practice owned by somebody else, and you are working there doing your dentistry. And some people will do that long term, but fortunately or unfortunately, I married a man whose ambitions were much bigger than that. And he was determined to be a business owner, and very, very quickly. So we met at university, and as undergrads, we met at university. It was a classic story. He dropped a mirror. He reached for it. I reached for it. Hands touched. Eyes met. Fell in love. All of that. So we met at university, and so we were both practicing in Essex, and he wanted to buy a practice. And at that point, we got engaged and married, all the while he was searching for a practice to buy, which is kind of like buying a house. You look at several, in your price range and try and see what it is you can afford. So we practiced as associates, so as GPs in other people's practices for a couple of years each before we went and bought our own practice, which was in 2011, 3.5 years after qualifying. And then things went on it was a much steeper trajectory from there.
Yeah. And when you were going through this journey of being a general practitioner working for someone else to, starting the business yourself, talk to us about the thoughts, the feelings and the lessons learned with that massive transition.
Both of us knew that, I think when you work for someone else and you can see how they treat staff, or what low morale there is in the workplace, or you can see how you could improve things. It's very frustrating then to work for somebody else when you think, I could probably do this better. No disrespect, but I just think sometimes, especially the older people who've owned businesses for a long time, they have a different way of thinking. They're a little bit jaded, a bit cynical, and not necessarily as forward thinking as the business as a whole needs them to be. So I understood his desire to own his own practice, but it was difficult because I knew the upheaval it would have on our lives as both as a couple and as professionals.
Yeah.
And I was, and inherently, I'm someone that is afraid of the unknown. And this was unknown territory, one that neither one of us were trained to take on, not qualified. I mean, we didn't know business management. We didn't know people management or HR or any of those things. And yet here we are buying a practice and inheriting about 15 staff who all looked at us and said, what should we do now? And we said, I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think we should do now? You know, and I still remember walking into the business that first day, just a little bit, just completely mind blown, have no idea what we're doing. And there were reps from different service providers waiting for us because they knew the business was changing hands. They wanted us to, you know, wanted to secure contracts. And we were on, and then they walked in, and we didn't even know anybody. And they were there waiting for us saying, could you sign here? You need to have a contract for clinical waste. You know, if you don't have one, you could get shut down. And we didn't know what to ask. And so we signed on the dotted line very naively, entering into contractual periods and we didn't get the best price or the best service. But at that time, we didn't know any different. So it's a very steep learning curve. You learn very quickly. You make a lot of mistakes along the way. And you hope none of them will kind of sink you. And yeah, you just muddle through each and every day. You just fight fires every day. That's what it felt like for the first few years.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned that one of the challenges for somebody in the profession, you know, is that, you know, you're not taught this business management and this people management work. So how did you go about learning and developing those skills to be able to run the practice?
So we inherited a manager who was very, very inefficient and poor at her job. And we let her go. And for the first 3 or 4 years of the business, I was the manager. And that meant long nights and working every minute in between seeing patients, because we were seeing patients full time at that time. We knew we needed to do that to make a living. And we couldn't, you know, and the business model since then has now developed such that we are 90% business management. We have a team of dentists that work under us doing the clinical work. So we can, you know, take a much more backseat business kind of view. But at the time we were doing the dentistry and we didn't hire another manager. I was the manager for 3 years, 4 years even. And what that meant is I learned the business from the ground up. And I wrote every policy, every regulation. I understood it. I, you know, broke everything down to really, truly understand it before we were then at a point where we can say, right, we can now teach someone else to do this. And the other thing I think we inherently never forgot is that people deserve to be treated like people. And to this day, we remember that. Yeah. What does it feel like to be in their shoes? And, you know, we can't sit in our golden tower and enjoy the profits rolling in when really the people on the front line are unhappy. So I did every job in the practice. I was receptionist, I was nurse, and I was all of those roles. And even then, and even now, I'll spend time with each of those people actually listening to what they think and feel and how they, you know, how they're coping day to day, but also what their ideas are. How can they bring something new to the table? And it's often these people that are the most inspiring, you know, and will, you know, help you evolve as a business and as a person.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, that's good for you. There's a book, I can't remember who it's by at the moment, but called The Founder's Mindset. And there's 3 main tenets. And one of them is about, you know, working on the front line. And so, you know, doing each of those jobs. And then I think that, you know, you can then have empathy for those people and hopefully be a better leader to them when you do step back in the future.
And I think also when things go wrong, you understand how to solve those problems. It's very easy to talk about how reception should deal with something without never having been on reception. And I think everyone should do that. And I have a rule in my business is that I'm not going to ask someone to do it unless I'm prepared to do it myself first. You know, most things I will do myself first, you know, before I say, right, I'm now ready to let someone else do this. And I feel I then have the authority to speak to them and say, no, this is how we should do it because I've done that role. Yeah. And I feel that's more empathetic as well to their situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that sounds like a great journey that you've been on. And so now you're at one practice. So talk to us about moving from one practice to four. How did that come about?
So I'm going to go back and mention my husband, who's extremely ambitious. And I always say being married to him is like, I bought 10 tickets for a roller coaster ride, and it's the worst roller coaster ride in the world. And just when you think it's coming to an end, he's like, no, we get another go. We've got another ticket, you know? And it feels a little bit like that. Because every year since we've been married, we either bought a practice or extended a practice or moved a practice or bought a house or built a house or had a child. And, you know, I feel like immense things happen and you never get a moment to breathe. And that's just what living with him is like. So we bought the first one, and it's quite rural, our first practice, because kind of like a house, we could only afford something that was so rural. Anything closer to a city or in a city was so expensive and out of our, you know, financial reach that we had to buy something very rural, and which also meant moving very rurally away from, and I'm a London girl at heart. I grew up in a city, you know, and I love the city. So when we moved to what I can only describe as a village, even though people call it a town, that was hard, you know, because then that's the other thing. We had no friends, no family, no real kind of connection outside of work, and that was hard as well. Yeah. But on that note, there was a practice that came up for sale. It was kind of the sister practice of the one we bought. It was owned by the previous owner's brother, and he wanted to sell. And my husband said, well, let's buy that. And I said, we just bought a practice like 3 months ago. We don't have the money and we don't have the time. When we don't know what we're doing, how are we going to do this? And he said, no, I'm going to do this. And if we don't have the money, I'll find a way. I said, no bank's going to lend to us. We don't have anything to offer. And you know what? He's one of the cleverest people I've ever met. And what he did was he went to the owner and he said, I don't have the money to buy this and I can't get the finance to buy it. Would you lend me the money to buy your business? Yeah. And that's what he did. He organized a payment plan, and he said, I'll pay, you know, 1/5 of your business to you every year for the next 5 years, if you'll let me do that. And that's what he did. And we bought the second one, and we split up at that point, whereas I took charge of one and he took charge of the other. And we did that for about 8-9 years. And all the while he was looking for more to buy. So, and we moved to Cambridge after having our children, or whilst having our children. So he wanted to buy something in Cambridge, closer to home and more local. And the next 2 practices happened kind of back to back. One of them in the middle of COVID, when the world was falling apart. And he said, look, there's a practice down the road. You know, we should buy that. And I said, really? Because this is the worst time to think about buying a business. He said, it'll be fine. And then the next 2 happened in the last 18 months. Yeah, you know, it's interesting being married to him. It's not always fun, but it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, it does sound like a roller coaster. So I can't wait to hear what's next on the roller coaster ride.
Oh, no, nothing. I really am quite done at this point.
You're ready for a year with no highs or peaks or troughs.
Absolutely.
Wow, what an incredible journey. And we're going to have to get your partner on the show at some point, because I'd love to hear the perspective of his too. So looking back on that journey, you know, tell us about, I guess, the highs, or what went smoothly or what was relatively easy.
I think that for me personally, the challenge was managing my life outside of work and managing a business. Because like I mentioned earlier, I'm married to my business partner. Work comes home with you. There's no boundary. There's, you share the worries. And yes, look, there's good bits. We understand each other very, very intimately when it comes to work, because we know exactly what certain things mean. The good, the bad, we get it. And so there's something, very, very inherently supportive of that. But the challenges are having navigated our relationship through all of that. But it's also having a family alongside. I've had 3 children in 5 years, and I came back to work a month in every time, even though I had C-sections each time. I came back to work within a month each time, because when you own a business, there's no switching off, ever. You know, your phone never stops ringing, your emails never stop pinging, you're never on holiday, not really. You're never away from your desk, not really. And everything is personal. You can't leave, for me anyway, you can't leave something at work because it means too much. And I think that's been the real challenge for me, is the expectation to manage both my home and my children and the business and my relationship, I think. Whereas my husband can be a bit more single-minded about the business and leave the home stuff, you know. I think that as a woman, I've struggled with that side of things. Nothing prepares you for that either.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like a lot to manage. And I guess it takes us down that can we have it all conversation, which would probably be another show. But thanks for sharing the challenge. What about when you look back at the career journey from student to here? What's been the high?
I think the high is really being able to call myself a dentist. I think it's a thing of immense pride to know you're a healthcare professional, have the power and capacity to really help people. I mean, when people come in pain and you get them out of pain and the gratitude they show, there's no better feeling really. And I think that, and also working with people, when I have, we're predominantly a female workforce, as in not the dentists themselves, but certainly the other rest of the team. And it's knowing that I've got, for lack of a better word, the power to influence, to inspire, to guide them in their own career journeys and be a part of them. You know, I think that's an immense privilege, and that's a huge, like, sort of bit of pride for me. I mean, when I think back over the years and everyone who's worked for us and the things that we've had to do for them, you know, and the journeys we've been a part of, I think that's another thing that I really enjoyed and I take away as a career high.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So we've talked about the essential education and training that's required to get into dentistry. What about if we think about, inherent talents or character traits or personalities? What do you think? What is suited to the profession in your opinion?
I think you've got to be a really, really strong communicator, because dentistry is about 60% communication, 40% clinical skill. Because we work with people, anxious people. I think you have to be incredibly motivated and have a really strong mindset and mature. You have to be mature and understand that the profession, people demand it off of you. You know, toothache doesn't stop at 5 o'clock. And if you are looking for a 9 to 5 job, then this is not the job that you should be in. You have to genuinely care for people. Like, genuinely, because I think that sometimes it's easy to lose sight of who you are and what you're doing. And bottom line is, you are here to help people. You have a duty of care. And even if they don't have the means to pay you, if they're in pain, then you should help them because you have the capacity to do that. And I think that, and you have to be resilient, like in any profession. I think you have to be quite resilient if you want to go the way. And we live in this world where medico-legally we're practicing very defensively. You know, we're constantly worrying about being sued. And so you have to, you have to have your wits about. You have to be resilient. And you have to kind of be a bit of a survivor if you really want to make it and be a success at it. Because anyone can do it, but to be good at it is a whole different thing.
Yeah. So I'm hearing the strong communication, that's and the balance of that versus the clinical, that's really fascinating. But I'm hearing strong communication, high empathy, a genuine desire to help people and care for people and being motivated and inspired. Those are the things that I'm hearing that are really important.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. You've mentioned that you are mentor to students coming into the profession. Can you talk to us about the role that mentors or role models have had in your life as you've gone on this journey?
I've had a few along the way. So my own mentor supervisor when I left university, he was a kind and big-hearted man. And I think, again, he was influential on me in the way that he did teach me kindness and empathy and a duty of care. He instilled those in me very early on because he practiced in that way, 20, 30 years into his working life. He was still that person. And I took that was something I took away with me from my time with him. And I'm also, other professionals in the business, I'm inspired by how they come in and they teach us that actually dentistry is changing and we can do more, we can be more. So, and my husband is my biggest sort of mentor, and he's the most inspirational person I ever met. I think professionally, those are the people I'd count.
Okay, so Dipali, what does the future hold for the dentistry profession?
I think the profession is evolving rapidly and it's presenting some very exciting new opportunities and challenges. It's not just limited to clinical dentistry. I mean, there are so many new avenues within the industry that are open to dentists, whether it's social media marketing, business management, but just even the different kinds of dentistry that we can now do. It's all really exciting. And, it gone are the days of the 9 to 5 where we used to just see the same patient do the same thing. It's just completely different now.
Yeah. So the future is bright and there's tons of opportunities as you've shown with your experiences within the industry, and that's not set to change. So that's great. I'm really curious, we're just coming out of the pandemic now. How did that impact the profession?
I think that impacted the profession in a huge way from two perspectives. The first, as dentists, we went into lockdown. As a healthcare service provider, we were locked down and unable to provide a service, which has never happened in the history of dentistry before. And it's a shocking thing, really, to have happened because people still have toothache, still have problems that need attention, are usually in a lot of pain when they're seeking that kind of attention. And we were not allowed to treat them. We had handcuffs put on us and we were not allowed, even though we had the resources, we weren't allowed to see them. It was a really scary time. The other aspect of clinical work was that also the whole pandemic was about this infection, this disease that came from the mouth and the chest and the breathing. And that's where we worked. So, when we were allowed to return to work, we had to wear a tremendous amount of PPE. It was an immense amount of pressure and we were working to a completely different way. So it changed all of us in so many ways. And secondly, as business owners as well, like every other business, we were wondering how the hell we were going to survive. If we weren't making any money, how are we supposed to meet our costs and pay our employees and all of that? So it was a very challenging and eye-opening time, I think. But one we grew from, one we learned from, and one we emerged stronger from, I think, really. I think we definitely are bulletproof now. If we can get through that, we can get through anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard about this Zoom boom. Tell us about that.
Well, the Zoom boom is an interesting hangover left over from the pandemic. A lot of people began to work from home and spending time on their phones, on Zoom, and they were able to really look at themselves in a way that they hadn't seen themselves before, and they were looking closely at their face and their teeth specifically, and more patients began to demand cosmetic dentistry in a way that we haven't seen before. Invisalign, teeth straightening, veneers and that sort of treatment. Smile makeovers, the demand for them has, increased drastically since COVID and the whole, we call it the Zoom boom for exactly that reason. But it's phenomenal how these things work. No, we really thought we were done for as a profession. But no, again, you evolve really.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess that's that expression, isn't it? Do or die. You have to keep moving. You have to keep innovating, and you roll
Yeah,
with the times. And if you can evolve as a business, you will, continue to grow. So, that's really
yeah,
fascinating.
absolutely.
Great. So the future is bright for dentistry. Brilliant. So for those budding dentists out there who might like to find out more, where would you recommend they go, and what advice would you give to them?
So I think that the first place, if it's a profession you're considering and haven't much personal experience of, as in, a dentist in the family or the friend circle that you might lean on for advice, I would suggest getting in touch with either your own dentist or local dentist and ask them for the opportunity to let you come and shadow and do a bit of work experience. And if they'll allow you, it's a great chance to be able to see exactly what happens from the perspective of a dentist day to day and
Yeah.
understand what we do, and then you'll know better if you can do it. And if it is still something that interests you at that point, then I would suggest talking to careers advisors, visiting universities on open days and looking at what they have to offer, talking to prospective students that are there. And I think that would be a great place to start exploring the idea of becoming a dentist.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Great tips there. So as we move towards wrapping up, what do you wish you'd known when you were starting out that you know now?
I think that I wish I'd known that the only thing that limits you is yourself, your thoughts, and your ambition is what it's self-limiting, really. And I didn't have any great ambition. I didn't have any great vision for myself for the future. I just thought I'd be a dentist and that's it. And now, 15 years later, I cannot believe the kind of trajectory my career has taken and the path that it's taken. It's not something I thought would happen. So my advice to my younger self would be to keep an open mind, not be
Yeah.
afraid of challenges, and also have the self-confidence to know that you'll be okay. You'll figure it out. Whatever it is, you'll figure it out. As long as you have a healthy sort of attitude, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah. And to that young person starting out whose choices were quite limited to medicine or dentistry or accountancy, what would you say to that person now if you had the chance?
I'd say be more confident, have a better sense of self. I think instinctively you know what your strengths are and your weaknesses to a certain extent. I also think it's really, really difficult to put that kind of choice on a 16 or 17-year-old. I don't know what I want to have for dinner this week, tonight, let alone what I want what I want to do next week. And a 16 and 17-year-olds, we're imposing upon them that we're forcing them to make a choice. Decide what you want to do professionally for the rest of your life now.
Yeah.
And, for the next 30 or 40 years, you have to decide now. And it's a really difficult thing to put on them when they have such little awareness of what the world has to offer. So I'd say, look at different opportunities, and keep an open mind, but also have a strong sense of self. If you like or don't like something, then know that, understand it, and kind of back yourself, really. So, and see where it goes, but make sensible choices, make informed decisions rather than, silly ones. Don't go to university just because your friends are going there or something. Be smarter.
Yeah. Good advice. Thank you. What's your favourite quote or inspirational expression that, keeps you going on the tough days?
I don't really have one, you know what? Actually, I say that, but me and my husband, whenever we've had a bad day at work or something has happened and we're like, wow, have no idea how we got through that. We thought that's the one that's going to sink us. We'll often say to each other, well, it's fine. We'll die another day. It's like a James Bond reference, we'll die another day. So, you just keep going and think, well, what's the worst that can happen? You just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Tomorrow is a new day.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you get to start again. So it's okay.
Yeah, the sun will come out tomorrow. Annie, the film.
Exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay. Dipali, thank you so much for coming onto the show. I have learned so much, and I know the audience will get so much value out of this conversation. So thank you so much. Are there any closing comments or words of wisdom or encouragement you'd like to leave with the audience?
Well, thank you for allowing me to be on this podcast. I think it's a really special chance to kind of share my story. I don't know how inspiring it would be, but it's nice to have been given the chance. I think that the only thing I'd probably say is that I'm a big advocate for dentistry as a profession. It's a fantastic profession. The privilege to be able to work with people, to help them when they are in pain and suffering, and to be able to heal them, it's such a privilege, and it affords us a very good life as a result of it. And it's a good profession for women as well, because we can have a family while having a very successful career, and there is we can find a balance between, we can have both in this profession, and it doesn't mean that if you take time out or anything, you're going to get devoted or lose the pathway to progression. You won't. So it's a really great profession to be in, and I can't champion it enough for anyone even considering it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed the show. If you gained any value out of today's episode, please help us spread the word by subscribing to the podcast. And if you have any questions, comments or suggestions, we would love your feedback. Please use the links in the show notes to get in touch. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Cause I